take it from there.
All right.
See, now we're doing this recording thing now, so it's all, I'm supposed to do like this big intro. I just fucked that right up. Okay.
You can start anytime, man.
All right, let's go ahead and do this. All right, folks, welcome back to episode 80 of Skirmish Supremacy. It's already been 80 episodes. Holy crap. Now saying that out loud, that is very weird. But tonight we are joined by Matt, Aaron, and Liz from Miniature Monthly to talk about their amazing online digital magazine. So, guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're pretty happy to be here. So
I gotta tell you, it's really hot in Southern California. Maybe it's not hot like Atlanta hot, but I'm dying over here. Like, maybe I'm not so good. It's just. I knew we were recording soon, so I turned my fan off, and I'm just sitting here, just dripping in sweat. So
you turn your fan off. You're like, I made a mistake.
Yeah. This interview was a big mistake.
Aaron, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the fire.
Even at the kitchen, I don't know.
Oh goodness
that's
gracious.
That's almost as bad as saying if you want to avoid being shot, try to avoid bullets.
Yeah. Don't stand in front of a gun.
Oh goodness.
Well, on that note, so these are the ragtag group of folks that run Miniature Monthly. So, guys, why don't we just go around and introduce yourself a little bit, talk about some of the stuff you've done. Obviously, a lot of the miniature people that listen to our podcast probably know who you are because they've seen your work and they've all ogled it at some point. But I know a lot of the RPG guys that we deal with probably don't know you as well.
Who wants to start?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me?
I can start, I guess. Okay, so my name is Aaron Lovejoy. I'm just a weird painter from Southern California. And last summer, I kind of had an idea to start a miniature tutorial service type thing and run it through Patreon because it was the easiest way to do it, and it just made sense. So talking with Elizabeth and Jonathan actually at ReaperCon last year, it kind of made sense to partner up together and just go for it. So Jonathan, as you probably know, is Eldritch Studios, and he's an amazing video guy, editing guy, and Elizabeth is an amazing painter. So and apparently 2 or 3 people like her. So.
A couple of people. My mom likes me.
Mom actually messaged me before we started, and she said, "I really like my daughter. If that helps him." Yeah. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was a really good fit to start everything off. And I don't think looking back at this last year, I don't think I could have done it without them. In fact, I know I couldn't have done it without them. So that was awesome. And we started at Miniature Monthly in December, and it kind of took off. And the main goal is to teach people how to paint or help them along in their painting journey. It works out pretty good because we have different styles. Elizabeth is a completely different style painter than I am. So, if you're not into wet blending and stuff and you're into more layering, you can go one way or the other. And it's not just like my style is it. And then as we went, we kind of just things happened, and we started talking with Matt a couple months ago, and we're like, hey, why don't you do some videos for Miniature Monthly too? And that's where we are today. Matt jumped on board. He's done his first. We've edited the first part of his video, and it's his sketch style is pretty friggin' amazing. I got to watch it like a month before everyone else, so I was like, I'm ahead of everyone.
Dibs.
But kind of felt bad about that, but not really. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride. It's been pretty amazing, the community support and everything. And it's been fun being able to put down in a video form some of our techniques and stuff. And there's still a lot to go. We literally can't make them fast enough. But we're trying. So pretty exciting stuff. and the community involvement has been really good too. I mean, I really enjoy watching people grow in painting. And I know there's other people doing video tutorials and stuff, and it's like a combination. It's not just us. It's a combination of people learning from different people and leveling up, and that's a really cool thing to see.
Nice. All right, Liz, I guess why don't you go next? We'll put you right in the middle.
Okay. I guess that's fine. Hi, guys. I'm Elizabeth, and I might have a little bit of a miniature addiction. No, wait, that's not this kind of podcast. Anyway.
It could be.
It could be. With the amount of miniatures I know all of us have in our closets.
The gray pile.
Yes. I personally believe that the more we collect, the longer we live. It's like kind of being immortal. Anyway, so
Where did you do that?
I don't tell my secrets. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm a professional painter. Like Aaron said, I'm on board with Miniature Monthly. That's why I'm here. I've done a lot of work on chibis. So if anybody's seen my chibi stuff, I've painted a whole lot for like Ninja Division and Cool Mini or Not. Just kind of started getting into Kingdom Death stuff. That's been fun. And I do tutorials. So with Aaron on Miniature Monthly. So I guess I'm known for that now too. I don't know what else to talk about. What else should I say?
Well, you kind of married to this guy named Jonathan.
Oh yeah. That
might
guy.
As well help him plug his shit, woman.
Well, he was just on your podcast recently.
He was.
So Jonathan's actually our editor of Miniature Monthly, and then he also does Eldritch Studios. And he's super awesome, and they're doing Wander the board game, which I know you guys covered in one of the last episodes.
Which is amazing. Everyone's looking forward to that Kickstarter. We've actually had a lot of feedback about that, by the way.
Yeah, which was super awesome, and I'm really glad that people are excited. So that's about it for me that I know of. We could talk about Matt, because Matt's super awesome and exciting.
Hey,
well, on that completely forced segue, Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, hi everybody. I'm Matt DiPietro, and oh man, I've been doing this miniatures thing for quite some time now. But I'm mostly working in the wargaming industry as the head studio painter for Privateer Press. I did that for last decade, almost 10 years. But just in the last year, I decided to go independent because I want to kind of grow into some new areas and do some new stuff and paint some new different types of miniatures and everything. So just this last year, I started just a one-man studio called Contrast Miniatures, and I've been just painting a ton of models for private collectors and for competitions. But when I started the studio, I wanted to also be able to paint armies and kind of gaming miniatures and that sort of thing, as well as the high-end stuff. So I came up with my own sort of style, sort of a way to paint that I thought would be a really efficient way to paint. So I called this the sketch style, and that's what my first video for Miniature Monthly is all about. Is doing the sketch style, what we do is we sketch in black and white first, and then we can add colors through translucent glazes. And by doing it this way, you can kind of cut out base coating entirely, which is nice for me because I'm kind of sick of base coating after all this time. So it's just kind of a different way to paint, kind of more expressively, more loosely. And I find it's really great to just kind of spend an hour or two and be able to finish a model and have it look really great on the tabletop. Maybe like when you pick it up, you can see sort of rough transitions and that sort of thing, but all of the lights and darks are in the right places, which I find is kind of 80% of the model anyways. So It has a lot of applications for high-level painting to train you to put your highlights and shadows in really correct spots to give you a lot of extra drama and that sort of thing, and will also speed up your painting. So yeah, that's what the first few videos are going to be for Miniature Monthly, but I'll also cover lots of other techniques, and I really think Miniature Monthly is a great Patreon because you get 3 great artists with different approaches, and if one person's way of doing things doesn't work for you, you can learn from someone else, or just like learn from all of us, you can come up with your own style, which is a combination of what you were already doing and what you've learned from us, and you can get our feedback and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a great little thing. I'm happy to be a part of it.
And We're happy to have you because you're awesome.
Awesome. So you mentioned like painting the shadows and whatnot. So I need to ask you guys this because I get asked this a lot, and like I am a mediocre painter at best. So the question I always get asked is like for competition pieces and like your really high level stuff, I take it you guys don't use washes at all, do you? Like when it comes time to that.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, I think that people think like washing and dry brushing and things like that are beginner level techniques. And I think that we still do all of that stuff. Maybe not necessarily like dry brushing. I don't know. I don't dry brush, but I still use washes and glazes and stuff that I do. I don't know about Aaron and Matt. Yeah,
I think that that's the distinction there is like between the wash and the glaze, because a wash, at least the way I understand the term, is you kind of lay in really thin paint and let it sit into the crevices to give yourself some extra definition, but then you're only painting in relief. So how deep and how in relief something is, right? You're not actually painting the light being cast onto it or something like that. So what we've learned to do is instead of using that thin paint and just like applying it indiscriminately, we'll apply it very thinly and evenly over an area, and then it will tint that area without pooling, and then we can kind of control it better. And that's what a glaze is. So it's just a similar technique, just a little bit more refined. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more controlled. A more controlled version of that. And so that's why you can use all these basic, I guess what you'd call basic techniques, but like leveling it up to a higher level of painting is just being more precise about it and being more controlled and having it do exactly what you want it to do rather than just having happy accidents happen all the time.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, they think of washes, and like I hear this a lot, especially amongst the RPG crowd that are getting like Reaper Bones, and they just want to get some stuff painted and put on the table. Yeah, is they kind of take like they'll do the base coats of whatever it is on the Reaper Bones, and they'll take like your kind of well, it used to be Devlin Mud. I think it's Agrax Earthshade now. It used to be called like the Magic Wash from GW. And
Army Painter Soft Tone.
Yeah, it just like slather it all in there, just like indiscriminately wash that whole model, shake off any extra and just let it sit and dry, and they kind of ooh and ah over that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think of a wash, is you're just kind of taking the miniature and slapping this stuff everywhere and just letting it dry in the recesses. So
right.
Because I get asked that I've been asked that a lot about like whether or not high level painters actually use washes, and I was like, I don't know. I'm not a high level painter. Stop asking.
I think we absolutely, like I said, I think we absolutely do. But I think Matt has it right. Is that we just do it's controlled wash, and when I teach classes, we talk about that, and so it's just all about brush control. It's just all about the fact that we've spent so much time, that we can cut through all of the other stuff and figure out what works. And I would absolutely say that washes work 100% even when you're doing competition painting. So
awesome. I guess you just don't notice them as much.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's not like you're not going to see the blotchy wash of a gaming piece. You're going to see a controlled wash of a high-end paint job.
Right. So speaking of the high-end paint job on that, like kind of round table a little bit, when you guys are spending time on a competition piece, like something that you guys are like pouring 120% of your effort into, how long does it normally take you to paint one of those miniatures? So like, let's say if you guys were just doing a Space Marine Terminator, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Your soul, that's what it takes.
Like, for example, my piece Bloodstone with the canyon, that was 6 weeks of work.
That was a big
basically.
piece.
But I was building it outside. I was working 40 hours a week at Privateer Press, and then also building Bloodstone. And I had 6 weeks to do it, and I nearly I used up all of the time. I was doing finishing touches at the show, but did my all on that one. So like I try to do 4 to 6 weeks worth of work now, and now I can actually, put 40 hours a week into that instead of just 20 hours.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty intense. It's better to space it out, but it never seems to happen.
No, it never does.
Yeah, it's always last minute. Painting in the bathroom at the hotel.
Yep,
which
Aaron loves that.
The bathroom is the best place to paint. It has the best light. And sometimes there's a little stinky twang in there too, so that helps. You're like, you want to get out of there, so you're going to finish that paint job as fast as possible. Yeah, it's actually, no joke, it is the best light in the hotel, is in the hotel bathroom. And if you bring a small light with you, like a little hot light or something, you're good to go. Because otherwise it's so dark in those rooms, and it's weird lighting too. It's not just like your normal lighting. It's like, they'll have some weird orangey yellow lights or something, and it's just, I don't know, it messes with you. So it's all about hotel toilet painting or bathroom painting.
I think it's also important to, give yourself enough time, but not too much, because then you can kind of be a little bit too ambitious with the size of your project, and instead of being more reductionist with how much you're actually plan on doing. Because I think that a lot of times people's ideas start really big, but it's good to weed them down before starting to something that's manageable within the time frame you have. And that, and the idea is usually presented better that way anyways, when you've kind of gotten rid of everything that's extra. You know what I mean?
Yeah, less is more.
You don't have to put everything into a piece. It can be just some really good stuff, I think sometimes people, they go overboard. Like there's you're like, oh, I could do this. I got a waterfall and I'm going to put birds flying through the water, and I'm going to, and then suddenly they've got this convoluted mess, and they can't pull it off, stick with what you're really good at and put that into a piece,
Right.
Put your best forward, not the ultimate experiment.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that works out too. I mean,
I think experimenting with the pieces is good, because in theory it's your best work you've ever done, so it should be experimentation in some way, right?
Yeah.
So I always try to at least try one new thing with each competition piece, one or two new things. You can kind of push yourself into new areas, and it can be beneficial.
But don't do 8 new things. I've had people come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna sculpt my first full sculpt. I've never sculpted before, and this is all from Reaper painting competition, I'm going to do a full sculpt, and I'm going to airbrush for the first time, and I'm going to paint on top of that airbrushing for the first time, and and then I'm going to do water effects for the first time, and you're like, okay, good luck. That's a lot. That's a lot to figure out. But yeah, competitions are great for one-upping. So like Matt said, try something new, but try something new, or maybe 2 something news. Not too much, and just really put it all together and make something really great. And don't worry about the results, because it is one, it's a subjective paint competition, and 2, that might hit, if you're too worried about results and like, oh, I have to win this competition or whatever, you may not expand as much as you would have. You might try to keep it safe. Sometimes going outside of the box a little bit helps for us to grow as painters and stuff. So, and that's ultimately what you want. You want to get better at everything, one thing at a time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned subjective, the painting competitions being subjective. I myself have never entered any high level ones. And a lot of people kind of have this idea, kind of hearkening back to the old Warhammer Fantasy days, where it's like you had to have the painted display board and the army and everything else. And they had a checklist of stuff they had to do. Is there anything really strict like that at painting competitions that you guys have been to, like either Golden Demons or Crystal Brush or?
No, not. I mean,
I think it depends on the competition too.
Yeah, you gotta read the rules to the competition. So if they say no female models, don't put a female model. I mean, that's like ridiculous. But like in games, like at Games Days, which aren't around anymore, but there's rumored to be coming back. You have to enter a GW model at Privateer Press.
Yeah.
You know, you got to enter a Privateer Press model. I mean, that's just the way that competition is. So, you know, and you're not going to do some big monster and put that in you know, sci-fi single, because that's not a sci-fi single model, you know. So little things like that, yes, you got to pay attention. And I've seen competitions where people either got, you know, booted and there was no place to put that model, or, you know, they just read the rules wrong. You know, they made the base too big, stuff like that. So you got to be careful there. But the subjective thing that I was talking about is more like, you know, if
you don't know who's going to show up.
You don't know who's going to show up. And two, like, you don't like for me, I really like mechanical things. I'm a treadhead, you know, I like tanks and I like that type of thing. And so there's a possibility that in my, you know, when I'm judging a contest, I might pick a Night Titan over a Demon Prince, because the Night Titan is more mechanical and they did some cool weathering effects and stuff. And so that's just, you know, I try to consciously not do that. I try to look at things objectively, but we're all human. And
it's hard not to be biased.
It is. Yeah. You know, there was a story once where there was a Games Day and the judge from England was supposedly had said that he doesn't like Namatok metal at all. And if anybody enters that, don't expect an award.
Wow.
So
yeah,
you know, that's like, okay, you know, for a long time, it's been the thing with that, like at Gen Con, just don't do a GW model because they don't like those. So, you know, you like, okay, so I'm going to do like Dark Sword or Reaper or whatever, you know.
I think that some of the best, if people want to get into competition painting, I think that some of the best systems out there are maybe open systems, I feel, because an open system, instead of it necessarily ranked, an open system is you bring your pieces and you're judged against yourself. So they're looking at, you know, a body of work and they say, oh, you do bronze level work or you do silver level work, right? And then you can come back the next year and you can try to compete against yourself again and to get a gold. So I think that, you know, as far as competition painting goes, I think if you were asking what's easier to get into, I think even, you know, Tim, you said you're a mediocre painter, you'd probably have fun at an open system competition.
Right. You know, and I think a lot of that too also comes down to, you know, if you're doing like a GW competition or that's really what you're pushing for, you know, I've had some people tell me that they do research on like what everybody's really looking at, like what's the new hotness. Always paint new hotness if you really want to score that couple extra points ahead. But I don't know how real that is.
I mean, it depends on what your goal is with the competition, I guess. If you want to, you know, do everything you absolutely can to win, and allow that to change what your subject matter is, I mean, I don't know. I don't like that at all, personally. I'm just gonna do whatever I'm inspired with and try to make a connection with people out there through my work. That's how I try to approach it after all these years of doing it. 'Cause you can kind of get caught up otherwise in this kind of meta game where you're trying to figure out, you know, what's popular, what's not popular, and you know, quite very quickly whatever ideas you might have had are suddenly like taken away, and you know, there's someone else, you know, you're trying to please someone else instead of yourself, you know, instead of making something that's really your own.
Matt's saying have fun.
Yeah,
and
have fun.
Have fun, because at the end of the day, we're all just painting little toy soldiers, right?
That is very true.
Yes.
Boy, I could say the same about the win at all costs like tournament play too. Just like
Yes.
you were playing with little toy soldiers, you're a grown adult playing with toys.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Oh man.
Yeah, and just when you think you know what the meta game is for painting competitions, you show up. Like the last year I was at Games Day, that was always the thing at Games Day. They like the new models, paint the new models because that's what's hot right now. And there was like some really old Forge World models and stuff that won first place in a couple categories, and it was like, okay, well that broke that meta right there,
right.
know? So it is what it is, I mean, it just, you never know. And so like Matt said, just enjoy what you're doing and make something cool, like I was just talking to one of my private coaching guys, and he's got a few entries for Gen Con, and he was asking me like, well, what categories should these go in? And I was like, I just loved that he asked me that, because he didn't make any particular piece for a particular category. He just had to, when he was done, figure out which categories they went in. And I was like, that sounds a lot like how I paint some, it's like, okay, well, I want to do this in my mind. Here's the idea. And then if it turns into a diorama, okay, maybe it's in diorama or open or whatever. Or maybe it's a single figure. Maybe it's a squat. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be at the end. So it's kind of cool to have that mentality, because at the end of the day, he didn't really care about the categories. He cared about what he was making, And so, I think that's really cool, Like Matt said, trying to grab someone's imagination, his piece with the canyon. When I was a little kid, I went to Zion National Park. And as soon as I saw that piece, I was like, I was back at Zion National Park. That was my first connection to that piece, and that's one of the pieces from that crystal brush that I remember to this day. Like, it was like, wow, that was an awesome piece. I loved it. And had I not gone to Zion National Park, maybe I wouldn't have had that same connection or something. But I mean, it was it, except it had little War Machine figures and they were killing each other. But it's stuff like that. You never know what connection you're going to make with somebody. And so I think as like an artist, or as making the competition piece, it's just a matter of trying to get some feeling into it, and that I think, and when you can connect like that, it's a really good feeling, because it's, I mean, you're taking a gamble, I guess, Well,
you're putting your best out there for the world to judge.
Yeah, it can pay off, because a lot of times people aren't going to remember, who won gold in 2007, or something like that. Very, very. Nobody's gonna. A lot of times people won't remember the awards, but they might remember your piece if you make a real connection with the people.
Right. And so whether you placed or not, for that year, Crystal Brush, I remember Matt's piece, and I remember the garage. I forget who made the garage, but it was the Orc garage.
It was Emu's studio.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he just had, it was, he had converted all those orcs and stuff, and they were all in funny poses, and they were like working on some tank or something, and it had the old 50s style garage thing. Those were the two pieces that I remember to this day. Like, I can see it in my head, not to say there wasn't a ton of other awesome stuff, because there was, but those two pieces like grabbed me,
Right.
And so, I mean, that's like, I think that's a good compliment you can give to an artist when you're like, I remember your piece, like from all those years ago, yeah, I mean, it was a success, I guess I'd say.
Nice. So as far as the competition goes, I know you guys said that you're always just trying to paint, like what inspires you and like what you really want to paint. Like, that's how you guys approach it. But again, it's a competition. Have you ever like felt like there's certain events where you watch people like lose, or you're like, oh, that person should have won at least something better, or, should have placed or done anything like that? Have you ever kind of run into that in any of the competitions you've been in? Or even about yourself?
Yeah, it's like happens most of the time.
Yeah, and you can't dwell on it, because it's subjective and it is what it is. So you gotta go in, you gotta play the game, you gotta play fierce. Like, I'm super competitive all the way up until the moment when I drop that model off. And then it's out of my hands. Who cares? Let's go have fun. And however it ends up in the end, let's have fun. Because I had one competition where I didn't do that, and I listened to the people around me, and they're like, oh, you're gonna win best of show, and this is your year, and you hear that for 8 hours, and you start to believe it, and then of course it doesn't happen, and your butt hurt for 6 months, and I, like, that happened to me once, like right in the middle of my painting career, And I was like, I'm not going to let that happen anymore. I turn this stuff in. I'm not going to get too hyped up, like, visions of, I'm a daydreamer. So, I buy a lottery ticket and I've already spent the 400 million. I'm like, all my friends are rich, and then do I win? No, I won $10 one time. That was it, but if you go in with the mentality of like, I'm the hottest painter around, or like no one can beat me this year, I think you're going to be disappointed more often than not.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
And so I think you got to go in with a little bit of humility and just enjoy the show. Like, I know a lot of painters who don't look at any of the other pieces. And I'm like, that's crazy, because I get so inspired. I mean, I can't stand looking at my own pieces because I've been looking at them forever. My eyes are tired of them,
Right.
I know all the mistakes, and I know all the problems with them, and I know, the whatever. And then I look at someone else's stuff, and I look at Matt's stuff, I look at Elizabeth's stuff, I look at, all, like at World Expo. We were all just at World Expo a couple weeks ago, and it was amazing to look at other people's stuff and their styles. Like, some people are very dark, some people are very bright, somebody, it's really cool. And if you miss out on that because you're just too stuck on yourself, or I don't know what the mentality is for not looking at other people's work, but I think there's so much to learn from other people because they're not you.
I was going to say, sorry. No, Matt, you go.
I was going to say that you'll miss out on the other people too. The people, I mean, if you're into this hobby enough to go and compete, this is a chance to meet other people who are just as into it and just as passionate as you are about it. And those are like people you're going to learn from, and those are the relationships that you're going to make, and the friendships, that are really going to see you through if this becomes something that you're really, really into. You get to see their work in person, you get to, make those friendships. And I think that going to a competition should be primarily about that. If you can manage it, you also want to be competitive enough to do your best and all of that too. But coming in with some humility and with the primary goal of meeting people is really the best way to do it.
Oh, Matt took what I was going to say. I was just going to say that. No, it's okay. I was just going to say it's super awesome to make friends, and then their eyes don't glaze over when you literally talk about glazing. So.
Yeah, it is kind of nice when you can talk to other people who are, really, really are into painting and know a lot of techniques and stuff. And when you talk to them, they don't like go into la la land and just like, I have no clue what you're talking about. Because I mean, I've had so many conversations here in San Diego. We paint down at the local game store all the time, and it's just kind of funny because I'll be talking to someone and I look up and it's just the look on their face is just like I lost them at hello, and so it's kind of fun when you can go and talk with a Matt or an Elizabeth or something, and they're like, oh yeah, and check out this, and then and it registers in your brain. You're like, oh, that's a great idea. And I don't know. There's a lot of fantastic people in this industry and this hobby and everything, and just just some of the inspiration you get from other painters because they're so excited about things, is infectious, and just when you're thinking, I want to hang it up, I'm getting bored or whatever, and then you talk to another painter or you see their work and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm fired up, I want to try some of this stuff,
I think some of the most fun I've ever had is coming home from either a competition or a show and then working on something for the next week because you're so inspired and you're like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. So there's almost no artist block at that point. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, you think you're going to come home and just be totally burnt out, but it's exactly the opposite. You just want to get going again.
Sit on your ass and play video games for like 2 months straight. You're just like, I'm not touching a paintbrush.
That's beforehand.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're procrastinating on your crystal brushing.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do I do this?
Yeah, I'm not even enjoying this video game.
You're up at 4:00 in the morning painting, talking to yourself, and this weird dwarf sitting under a rainbow next to you. It's not even a miniature. You're just hallucinating at this point. Wake up in the morning, you're like, when the hell did I even paint this?
What happened? What was really going on here?
Oh my God.
So you guys obviously get inspired by each other as far as the painting goes. I gotta ask you this because I've heard a couple different opinions on this. When people walk over to you and they see like your work and realize that you're the artist, how much does it piss you off when they say something like, "Oh, I could never reach that level. I might as well give up on painting now," or something along those lines?
That makes me sad. That actually makes me really sad. I really don't like to hear people say that, especially since I think Matt and Aaron can agree because we're both teachers. We're all teachers. And, I think that we started somewhere. We started, painting
at the bottom
level. Yeah, at the bottom. And the only reason that we're here now is because, well, we've made a career out of it. So we have to paint every day and we have that patience and that experience. But I think that it makes me sad because I was like, no, if I can do it and if people told me I could do it, then they can too. And you shouldn't snap your brushes. You should be inspired and, go home and try to be better and look at your work and be proud of your work. So that's it. That's my take on it. So
I think people can a lot of times tear themselves down just as a habit. It's one of those really bad habits that you end up learning and you have to break at some point, or struggle with. And it's part of our jobs, as teachers to help our students like get through that, because I know I've had to deal with it myself, and just about, I think everybody has to in their own ways. So I try to give my students the tools they need to get where they want to go. I really don't think that it should be a expectation that the goal of miniature painting is to become a competition painter and become some star painter. Most people's goals is just to get an army on the field that they're happy with, that they can feel proud of. And I think that that's a really achievable goal, and, that's my primary goal as a teacher, is to help people get that. It's not to get to studio level or even competition level painting. Usually people want to be able to, come home from work and spend a few hours painting and have something really cool to show for it. And if they can do that, then they can be happy. And then once they've been doing that for a while, maybe they want to take it somewhere else,
Yeah. There's always, you can level up as you go. And that's why I encourage people to get together in your local towns and stuff and have a paint night. Like, go down to the local game store. A lot of game stores will let you paint there. I know that the game store here in San Diego, we paint there all the time, like from when it opens to it closes. But some friendly competition between, your peers. Most people aren't display level painters at a game store. In fact, there aren't really any at my local game store. There's a couple that pop in every once in a while, but it's mostly gamers, and that's where I came up through the ranks, was with them. And it was like, some guy would bring in a squad he just painted, and you're like, oh, that looks fantastic. I want to have a better squad than that guy. And so it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to try to win. I just started painting. I'm going to try to win Crystal Brush. It was, I just started painting. I want to have the coolest squad in my little group of friends, and
right.
That's an achievable thing. And that's, I think, what pushed me at the very start was to just, I just played Warhammer 40K. I had Black Templars, so I wanted to make some cool conversions and some good paint jobs. And there were several other guys who did fantastic armies in San Diego, and there still is. And so that pushed me. It was like, okay, well, I need to one up that or whatever, And so it was kind of like friendly growth,
Right.
And that's a very achievable thing. And I think painting with your friends is a blast. I mean, I've always said it. Painting gets rid of a crappy day at work. And if you can sit around and hang out with your friends, and if you're over at somebody's house and you can drink a couple beers, all the better. So having that fellowship. The fellowship of your fellow painters with you, even if we spent years not talking about painting, we just BS'd, but it was fun. And every Friday night we'd go and paint together, and that really got me through some tough times in my life, for one, but then also I found myself, I'm getting better at painting. I'm enjoying it more,
Right.
If somebody goes to a trade show and finds this cool new shade of silver, it's the best silver metallic color they've ever seen, they're probably going to buy it and bring it back. Well, you can try it out now because you're painting with them, and you're like, oh, that is a cool shade of silver. I'm gonna go purchase that myself. And so we did that for years and years and years, and then at a certain point, we just we're like, hey, we're rocking, and you end up with some good friends. So
yeah. So
go ahead.
No, I was actually going to say, Matt, you've mentioned it a couple times now about there's a difference between studio painting and competition level painting. Do you guys mind talking about that? Because I have a feeling a lot of people out there have this idea that the studio painting is competition level painting.
No.
We would all be bankrupt.
So studio, there's a lot of things that about studio painting that, for example, you're usually painting somebody else's vision of the artwork. You have an art director and concept art showing you what colors to use and that sort of thing. So in a sense, the idea that you're painting isn't really your own, and you're just trying to best represent whatever company is, employing you as vision of the work, right? And you're accountable to that. So when you're a competition, there's none of that. There's no support. You basically have to come up with all your own ideas and try to impress the people and the judges and that sort of thing. So, and also there's a lot of custom work that would go into competition level painting as well. It's kind of once all of the limitations are taken away as far as time goes, as far as what techniques and what you can do with it, it's what you come up with. So that's kind of competition level painting. Whereas with studio level painting, there's always going to be limitations to what you can do, either because of the vision of whatever company you're working for is, and then there are also their timeline. So you have to work within a deadline as well. Or if you're doing it freelance, trying not to get paid $5 an hour because you took too long, something like that. So there's a lot of concerns that go into studio painting that will kind of limit what you can do with it. But studio, I think, is a great. That's where a lot of work is for people, and it's a great way to get yourself known and get a lot of experience as a painter, get a lot of brush time, which is really important because that's the only way you can get to those competition areas. But you can also kind of get trapped in just a routine and a certain way of doing things because sorry.
Someone's knocking on your door.
Someone's knocking on my door, but yeah, I guess I'm probably just kind of going around in circles anyways. I'll be right back, guys.
I know for me, the studio, I thought someone was chopping food, like vegetables in the background. But for me, studio level painting is you're getting paid to paint a model for a company, basically. And if you're charging, say, $200 for that studio level paint job, and it takes you 10 hours, you made $20 an hour. That's not too bad. Now, remember, you got to pay your own taxes and healthcare and all that other stuff on top of it. So
right.
A lot of that goes away. But a competition piece of the same piece could take 40 to 60 hours. Now, 60 hours, if you spend, even 40 hours on that studio level paint job, and got paid $200 for it, you're making $10 an hour, and you're still paying your own taxes and all that other stuff. If you take 60, you can see where it starts shrinking.
Right. Yeah.
And, one of the things that I always have said, and pretty much everyone agrees with me, is the better you paint, the less you get paid.
So true.
Which is really sad. If you're a football player, the better you do, the more you get paid, right? In painting, it's the exact opposite because it's I don't know. There's just this atmosphere of it shouldn't take that long, or for some reason because it's art, it's not worth anything. But if you're trying to do it for a living, it is worth something. It's worth your time, So I can do a 1 hour miniature for a gaming type thing, and sometimes make $25-$30 an hour, whereas if I'm doing like a competition piece or something like high end, it could take way longer than that. And so suddenly you're making $5 an hour. So for me personally, I try to keep the studio stuff at sort of a minimum, like less than 50% of my yearly what I do, and then I do armies the rest of the time.
Gotcha.
And so, not a lot of painters can do that. There are a lot of painters, they can't scale it back and scale it forward. They can't do crappy work and then really high end work. It just doesn't work that way. They can't do it mentally, which is fine. I mean, everyone's different. So like whatever, you gotta find your own way. But I found that I can scale it back and I can do, gaming stuff that's not nearly as detailed or anything. And then I can scale it back forward and do something really high end if I need to, or I can be right in the middle and do something that's studio. And studio stuff is just painted good enough to take a good photo.
Gotcha.
For me, that's what it means.
and some of us,
well, that's all that matters. They're putting it on their website. They want to sell miniatures. It is what it is.
and a lot of us with the studio stuff, a lot of us are working on the studio stuff. And then as Matt mentioned earlier, we'll do the competition stuff in our free time. So we're a little crazy. Just painting all the time. Aaron doesn't have time for. I've run into that issue is I haven't really been able to paint for anything this year. Or what happens is like I had planned to paint for something for World Expo, and then I have a company contact me, and they're like, "Hey, we need some stuff done in 2 months, and the price is really good." So I'm like, fine, I'll take my time that I was going to do a competition piece, and I will do work instead.
You got to really learn to let it go. I mean, for a couple of years there, I was actually kind of getting depressed over it. I used to say, good ideas come to me to die, because I'd go to a convention or something and get all inspired. Like Matt said, you come home and you're all inspired.
Yes.
And then I'd go right back to painting an army or doing some whatever commission I was going to do. And it didn't matter if it was a high-end commission or a low-end commission. It wasn't what I wanted to do,
Right.
And so all these ideas in my head would just fade away. Like I wouldn't even get a chance to like write it down in a paper, because I would just be like, it was like it got depressing after a while. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. I'm not going to get to this. So one year I got tired of it, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do one competition piece a year. I'll pick one convention. That'll be my Super Bowl this year, and that's the one that I will put an effort in, and I will work all year long to be able to take 1 month off of work. And I got to finish that model in 1 month. So a couple of years ago at Crystal Brush, I did the No Hope piece, which was infinity diorama.
It was amazing.
In front of a theater, like a movie theater.
That piece is great.
and so that one, it took me 2 months to paint it, but I did it in 1 month. It was freaking brutal.
So Aaron,
so I worked double shifts, but that was my competition piece for that year. So I got to stretch a little bit and try some stuff like Matt said. I never built a building before. I had built like fantasy buildings, which you can get away with a lot, like a wonky wall. I mean, it all adds to the fantasy look, But when you're building a movie theater, you can't have a wonky wall. Like, it's got to be straight. Everything's got to be, like perfect. And so that was a big challenge for me on that, but it was a lot of fun. And so that got my creativity out for that one piece. And then I went back to painting armies, I just, it was what it was,
Aaron, what competition are you going to paint for this year? 'Cause you're running out of months to paint.
I know. And I have two ideas, and I honestly don't think I'm going to get to either of them. If I can, I will. But it's just, who was that idiot who started Miniature Monthly anyways? Like, what was he thinking?
I know.
But the thing is, I mean, the cool thing about Miniature Monthly is we're laying the groundwork this year, and this is the really hard year, I think. Because I didn't want to just come in and like have videos and be like, oh, this is how you do this, some insane technique, or this is how you paint a whole model. Because I think a lot of people haven't learned the basics really well. And I mean, I've been painting 6 or 8 years before I realized I don't know the basics. I've been like winging it this whole time. And I don't know how to control my paint. I can't control, how much water's in it. I can't control anything. And so I like went backwards in my painting and started relearning techniques, relearning how to base coat and how to do these things. And so we've been trying to make videos of that, in this first year, that kind of show you how to paint. And then when we come in and you get a video like, hey, this is how we do this OSL thing, which is one that Elizabeth just did. You're not learning how to paint. You're learning how to do OSL. you know.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of important because a lot of people skip that. You know, when I was younger and skateboarding, you know, no one wanted to learn how to drop in on a ramp or kick turn or learn to pump, you know. But those are all things you got to learn so you can go fast enough to do a big air. You know, everyone just wanted to come in and do a 360 ollie kickflip indie grab, you know, and they never understood why they couldn't do it. You know, it's like, well, you don't even know how to skateboard yet, you know. And I see that. I mean, it's kind of human nature. You just want to do the best thing first, you know. But I really do encourage people to start with the basics and really watch your paint, watch what happens to it. It's super, super boring, but guess what? In like a year or two of doing that, you're going to be able to anticipate what your paint's going to do. And it makes painting so much easier, you know. It just does. So, and we do see a lot of people doing that. I mean, Elizabeth's a perfect example of you know, new painters leveling up very quickly. You know, I mean, she's just a baby in this industry, you know.
They're all old timers. I think I've been doing this for maybe 5 years now. So
yeah. I'm looking at the end of the road, you know. But that's what's encouraging. I mean, Matt and I have been around for a while now, you know. And I don't know how Matt's learning process went because I wasn't around 10 years ago. But I know for me, it was a very slow process, and it was just like, you know, once a year maybe you learn something new on accident. And the rest of it was just like these stories that people told that were like hearsay or whatever. But like when Elizabeth came on, there was classes to go to. There was all this stuff, and she was able to use her own natural artistic talent and level up very quickly, you know. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it so like people, we're trying to advance things, you know, or help the advance of painting, you know. And I think it's going in a good direction. I mean, there's so much cool stuff out there now, and you know, I mean, I don't know what the next big thing will be, but I'm sure it'll be awesome.
I think that the internet helped a whole lot. There still sometimes feels like there's that divide between like American and Euro painters, but I think that gap is slowly closing too. I know that, like Aaron was saying, a lot of times back in the day, that the community was pretty inclusive. And I don't know if this just goes for painters or if this is gamers as well. But I think that the advent of, you know, more internet, more Facebook has allowed us in the past probably 10 to 15 years to everybody to get together. And not just that, is the fact that, I mean, geek is chic, right? So there's this community that just keeps growing, right, and it's making it a lot easier. So
yeah, as long as we keep fostering that and teaching the next generation and you know, moving forward, I think that it'll continue to grow. This is a good time to be one of us in the industry, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good time to be a lover of miniatures, actually. I mean, I don't remember another time that there was so much to choose from.
Yes.
And not so much crap to choose from,
good
like
stuff.
so much amazing stuff to choose from.
Yeah.
You know?
Too much good stuff.
Guys are coming out of the walls practically, you know, like just like poof, here's this new person. They have like this, you know, a line of bus or a line of new miniatures or whatever. And you're like, wow, where did they come from? Like, you know, who are these people? And
like, oh yeah, I just got to do some stuff on ZBrush, whatever.
yeah, what else? But it's really cool. I mean, you know, I remember when I first started, it was all GW, which I mean, that's what I played. I played Warhammer 40K, and I didn't know there was anything else, you know. And so that was my circle of friends. That's all we did, and there was no other company as far as I was concerned. But then slowly over the years, I started noticing, I'm like, oh, that Infinity stuff's pretty cool, you know, and oh, you know, I really like, you know, Darksword makes some really cool fantasy figures, and you know, and it just started, it grew into the point where now it's just like, you know, I'm open to anything, you know, and I think that's a good attitude to have because there's so much cool stuff out there.
I mean,
I started painting busts maybe a couple of years ago, and it's now one of my favorite things to do. I just love painting the larger subject and really being able to push it into some amazing places. That's like my favorite thing these days. And we just live in this time where, there's so much good stuff, so many different options. And also, the best painters of sculpture that have ever lived in history are like practicing right now, and being able to be a part of that is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And Gen Con is celebrating 50 years of gaming, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
I think they were gaming before that, but
I think so. But
I'm pretty sure games have been around before there was really too much in a formed language. But hey, whatever.
Yes. We went to Europe and we saw one of the oldest games is from like a Minoan culture from like prehistoric, like 9,000 BC. It was crazy. It was super cool though. So.
What was it called? Who could take a rock to the face the longest? Like,
it was actually pretty elaborate. They had like a game board and everything. It was cool.
Could take a rock to the face.
The ancient game of hold my beer and watch this.
Let me pummel you. It's the first game of Uncle.
I am still standing, therefore I win.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Oh man. So you guys have mentioned you actually kind of blew my next question right out of the freaking water, but that's okay. So one of the things that I've noticed kind of on the retailer side, because I my day job, I kind of approach things from that angle, is that yes, gaming is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes, there's a lot of new miniatures out there. Do you guys find that with obviously the growth in the industry, there's a growth in painters, or do you feel that you're kind of seeing, I guess, a backward slide on that, where there's so many people that are used to like, pre-painted X-Wing and things like that, where it's like, they just don't even want to take the time to paint anymore. There's so many games out there that have great miniatures that are like, you don't have to paint these at all if you don't want to. Do you guys see that at all, or is it quite the opposite for you because of the growth?
I think it's the opposite. I see every year there's like at least, I don't know, like 3 or 5 new painters who I'm like, wow, this guy's amazing. I had never heard of him before. I really like his work. I don't know. I'm always discovering some new painter that, somewhere in the world who's doing something awesome.
Right.
Yeah. And people can enjoy the hobby one way or the other. They might play X-Wing for 5 years or something like that. And then they'll get started painting, with Games Workshop models, and then they just discover they like to paint, and then off they go. So we can't. We should just be about what we're about, what we enjoy, and if somebody else likes to do something else, then there's no reason that has to take away from what we're into.
Oh yeah. I'm definitely not talking about like crapping on people that don't want to paint or something along those lines. But it's just.
I don't know. I think it keeps on growing. I keep on seeing new people.
Frankly, I don't talk to anyone who has pre-painted miniatures.
Actually, well, I was going to say with the pre-painted stuff, a lot of those people like to repaint the pre-painted stuff, and they make it look fantastic.
And that's the thing; it's like a gateway drug. So pre-painting is a gateway drug to painting, like what we do. Because you'll notice on all those things, like you have X-Wing or something, or whatever, and they'll. There's always the one guy who will post, "Oh, look, I repainted this with my airbrush or whatever." And even if it's like, just a real quickie job. There's always that element of people are creative, and
right.
and people are inherently lazy like me, and then also creative, and the creativity makes you get up off your butt. And so if you can get a pre-painted miniature and you're like, oh, this is great, oh, look at all the detail and everything, and then all of a sudden you see somebody else like, just one-upped it a little bit, they added a little bit of color to it, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to do that too. So you go in, you learn how to do it or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're painting miniatures from scratch, I think there's still enough model building and stuff going on. Like that's how I started. My dad would make models with me when I was a kid. So when I saw Warhammer 40K and it wasn't a pre-built thing, it was something you had to put together. That really appealed to me. I liked the genre and I liked the fact that you had to build it. And then when I found out you could change it, and do a conversion and make something new, that was even cooler because I wanted to, make a cooler hero than my friend had,
Yeah.
And that was kind of the progression, So I think it works out both ways. There's people that can't stand the fact that you have to put together a model. But then there's people that can't stand the fact that the model is already put together. So I think there's a good mix of both, and so I think they both help each other.
Yeah, I think for me, it depends upon the game. Like if it's a game where I've got a lot of models I got to put on the table, I'm okay with them being pre-assembled as long as they look cool. You know,
Right? Yeah.
like, oh, thank God, that's one thing I don't have to do. But you know, if it's something like if it's only 3, 4, 5 models, yeah, let me model it.
Right. And if they're like the models would be better detail and they'll be cooler if they're multiple pieces. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
So you've always got that too, you know. And I don't mind playing Zombicide with pre-made figures. I don't care. I've painted 17 sets of that game. I am not painting mine. I throw the models back into the box and I'm done. And it's great. I like the game, But then for Shadows of Brimstone, you have to build the models, and I really enjoy that game too. So, but then it gives me some options, I'm the studio painter for Shadows of Brimstone. So I've seen how it's all supposed to be painted. And then when I paint my own, I can change it up a little bit and make little conversions and stuff that I was thinking about when I was doing the studio model. So, I don't know, it works out. So, 2 different games, 2 games that I like, and one of them I enjoy that I don't have to put the models together, and the other one I enjoy I do have to put the models together. So, it is what it is.
I was going to say,
not to burn yourself out.
I was going to say one of the things that I think we get frequently asked as probably professional painters is, "Oh, so you have all of your games painted, right?" And I just laugh really, really loud because no. So I was going to say pre-painted is a bonus. I'm like, "Oh, look, this is really pretty," and I didn't have to paint it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I get to play with it.
This problem is how I came up with the sketch style. Actually, was we were playing Talisman a lot with my gaming group, and I was working at Privateer Press, and I knew that, after a few games, it's like, oh, I wanted to paint these models because, this is my job, and everybody's like, why aren't these models painted? So we came up with if you won the game of Talisman, your character got painted, but I wanted to spend only an hour on painting it, so. Came up with a really fast way to paint, and now that's how I paint all of my gaming stuff. So if you can just commit a small amount of time and do it gradually, that's what I end up doing.
So for all of you Army painters out there that are listening, you should really check out our video that Matt just did on the Patreon, because that is what he's teaching.
Segway plug. Nice.
I had to. I'm also awkward and I embrace it. So there's that too.
We all got to let our freak flag fly somehow.
Yep.
I mean, we've all been called nerds at some point for painting miniatures and pushing miniatures around the table.
Hey, at least we do something we love, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Come on, at least I sit some days and as a professional painter, and I'm like, man, we complain about what we do, and yes, it's a lot of work, and sometimes the pay sucks. But at least I'm not flipping burgers somewhere. I am doing something I love, and we're having a great time, and we have lots of friends, which is super awesome, and we get to hang out with people all over the world, which I think is one of the coolest things for me. Is like, I know people from Russia, and I know what's going on in the world because I talk to those people. So I think for me, that's the most rewarding is a lot of times the friendships I've made with my work that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Oh yeah, definitely. So one final question. Where do you guys see Miniature Monthly in 5 years? Ooh, I got you all.
Making videos.
Making more videos. Hopefully at a booth at Gen Con.
We'll definitely have taken over everything by then. So
world domination. I want to be the president of the United States, which I think could happen.
I think so.
Yeah.
Seeing how things are now, I have a pretty good shot. We'll give out free paints.
Got a reality TV star now, so
yeah. But yeah, I mean, in 5 years, if we're still around, which I don't see why we wouldn't be, it's going to be a fantastic tomb of painting knowledge. Unless we all get worse at painting, but there's so many things, like right now we have, we're covering each subject and we've probably got a video on each subject.
22 videos right now. We've been doing this for, 8 months, Aaron?
Yeah, 22 videos. But yeah, I mean, it's just, we're covering each subject, but there's going to be a point where, like I've done true metallics, but there'll be a point where, Matt does true metallics, so you get his spin on it. And I think that's the most important thing, because you get to see it different ways. Like Matt said at the very start of this, it's not just my way of painting. I mean, I try to stress that in my classes and stuff, and even in the videos. It's like, this is just how I do it, how I found that works. But I know that, the kind of spray can primer I use might not work for you because you live in a different area. The humidity is different. There's all these different factors. And so part of it is us sharing our ways of maybe experimentation and how we got to a certain technique or whatever, and the reasons why. I do this technique because it's super dry in my area, or it's super wet in my area, or whatever. And I found that this works really well. Well, that will ring a bell in someone's ear, and they go, man, it's really dry in my area too. I'm going to try that. And oh my gosh, it works, or it becomes a hybrid of what they're already doing. I always tell people, try out a new technique, and then after a couple weeks, let it go. Don't do it anymore. And just start doing start painting like you painted before you started that technique. And you'll find that pieces of that technique work their way into how you paint. And now it's your technique. It's a hybrid that works perfectly for you. And, when I first started, I thought that everything was direct. Like a square has to be a square. A line has to be a line. And then as I grew as a painter, I found out that a square could be, more of a rectangular shape, or it doesn't have to be exactly the way you were showed. That's just a jumping off point for you to start a technique and then let it work its way into your techniques and then become something that works for you. Because at the end of the day, it has to work for you. If it doesn't work for you, then it's a useless technique.
Right, exactly.
But that's what we really try to do at Miniature Monthly, is just have different kinds of techniques and stuff. So you're not stuck with just one type of thing. Like I did my first web blending video, and a couple of the comments were, I'm more of a layerer person. Well, luckily Liz was doing a layering video right after that, so I was like, oh, thank God, it's like, because I didn't plan on doing a layering video for a while, but it's cool because there's different ways of doing things, and everyone has a different style, and sometimes the way someone explains it is better for you too. Elizabeth might explain a certain technique better than I can explain it, and same with Matt, so it's like, if we have different
way that will reach more people, because not everybody learns the same way, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm probably the only person in the miniature painting universe who has actually farted during a video.
He did.
And we left it in.
He asked Jonathan to take it out, and Jonathan said, nope.
I'm going to have to remember that.
I was suggesting, and it happened, and I remember I was thinking in my head, I'm like, oh my God, that just happened. Oh, it wasn't very loud. It wasn't very loud, didn't it? I'm like, no, my microphone's really good on my camera. I know it heard it. Then the thought process going through my head, I'm like, well, I could restart the video, but I'd already gotten halfway through the segment, and so that would have meant repainting that whole segment of the leg or whatever I was doing. So then I just started laughing because I was like, I'm screwed. I'm like, you might want to take that out, and then there's just a big flash on the screen that goes, nope.
So hopefully we're here in 5 years with lots of farts. If Aaron has anything to say about it,
hey, we're human, right?
Well, averages is bound to be a few more in there after 5 years. Right?
Yeah, especially talking about me. I know my close friends would just be like, "Yeah, I'm surprised there wasn't a fart earlier in the videos." But yeah, I've been.
Can you imagine though the store of knowledge we'd have built up after 5 years? Like that's all you ever need.
Yeah,
hours of us.
Note to self: do not film on curry and taco night. Just,
yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
So,
Well, guys, why don't you tell us where can we find Miniature Monthly? Website, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Yes.
I guess I'll do it.
The actual plugs for the site.
You can find it all those places.
You can find us on Patreon at Miniature Monthly. I think to do that, you just do miniaturemonthly.com and then it's patreon.com/miniature monthly. I apologize. And then we're also on Facebook, so feel free to hit us up there. Aaron and I also both talk to people on Facebook via our personal profiles. I'll let Matt handle his. So.
You can find me on Facebook at either my studio, which is Contrast Miniatures, or you can reach out to me personally. I'm also have my personal account on Facebook. And then I post on Instagram at Matt DiPietro Art. And hopefully I'll get to talk to some of you out there.
Awesome. Well, guys, I want to thank you all for coming on the show and talking more about Miniature Monthly. So it was been great having you all.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Skirmish Supremacy, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.